Dear friends, let's read Bade Bhai Sahib, written by Munshi Premchand. So let's begin with the story. My older brother was 5 years older than me, yet just 3 grades ahead. He'd started his schooling at the same age I had, yet he didn't like being hasty in an essential issue like education. He needed to establish a firm foundation for that grade structure, so he took 2 years to complete 1 year's work. Sometimes he even took 3. In case that the foundations weren't well made, how could the building preserve? I was 9 years old, he was 14. He had full right by precedence to oversee and instruct me, and I was supposed to follow his orders by law. His disposition was that of a studious kid. He was mostly found sitting with a book open in front of him, sometimes for leisure and to rest his mind. He would draw pictures of birds, dogs, and cats in the back of his notebooks. Occasionally, he would write a name, word, or a sentence 10 or 20 times. He might copy a couplet out several times in beautiful letters or create new words which made no rhyme or reason. I wasn't really very keen about studying. To pick up a book and sit with it for an hour was a tremendous effort. As soon as I found a chance, I'd leave the hostel and go to the field and play marbles or fly paper kites or sometimes just meet a chum. What could be more fun? But as soon as I came back into the room and saw my brother's scowling face, I was petrified. His first question would be, "Where were you?" Always this question. Always. "Where are you?" He asked in the same tone, and the only answer I had was silence. I don't know why I couldn't manage to say that I had just been outside playing. My silence was an acknowledgement of guilt, and my brother's only remedy for this was to greet me with indignant words. "If you study English this way, you'll be studying your whole life, and you won't get one word right. Studying English is no laughing matter than anyone who wants to learn English. You've got to wear out your eyes morning and night and use every ounce of energy. Then maybe you'll master the subject, and even then, it's just to say you have a smattering of it. Even great scholars can't write proper English, to say nothing of being able to speak it. And I ask you, how much of a blockhead are you, chat? You can't learn a lesson from looking at me. You've been seen with your eyes how much I grind. No matter how many shows and carnivals there may be. Have you ever seen me going to watch them? Every day there are cricket and hockey matches, but I don't go near them. I keep on studying all the time. And even so, it takes me 2 years or even 3 for one grade. So, how do you expect to pass when you waste your time playing like this? Why waste our dad's hard earned money?" Hearing a dressing down like this, I'd start to cry. My brother was an expert in the art of giving advice. He'd say such sarcastic words, overwhelm me with such good counsel that my spirits would collapse, my courage disappear. I'd think, why don't I run away from school and go back home? Why should I spoil my life fiddling with work that's beyond my capacity? But after an hour or two, the cloud of despair would clear away, and I'd resolve to study with all my might. I'd draw up a schedule on the spot. How could I start working without first making an outline, working out a plan? In my timetable, the heading of play was entirely absent. Get up at the crack of dawn, wash hands and face at 6, eat a snack, sit down and study. From 6 to 8 English, 8 to 9 arithmetic, 9 to 9:30 history, then mealtime. Afterwards off to school. A half hour's rest at 3:30 when I get back from the class. Geography from 4 to 5, grammar from 5 to 6, then half hour's wall. In front of the hostel, 6:30 to 7 English composition, then supper, translation from 8 to 9, Hindi from 9 to 10, from 10 to 11 miscellaneous, then to bed. But it's one thing to draw up a schedule, another to follow it. It began to be neglected from the very first day. The inviting green expanse of the playground, the balmy winds, the commotion on the football field, the exciting fragments of prisoners' base, the speed and flurries of volleyball would all draw me mysteriously and irresistibly. As soon as I was there, I forgot everything. The life destroying schedule, the books that strained your eyes, I couldn't remember them at all. Then, my big brother would have an occasion for sermons and scolding. I would stay well out of his way, try to keep out of his sight, come into the room on tiptoe so that he wouldn't know. But if he spotted me, I'd just die. The yearly exams came around. My brother failed. I passed and was first in my class. Only 2 years difference was left between him and me. Now I could be a little proud of myself, and indeed my ego expanded. My brother's sway over me was over. I began to take part freely in the games. My spirits were running high. One day, when I had spent the whole morning playing stickball and came back exactly at mealtime, he said, with all the air of pulling out of sword to rush at me, I see you've passed this year and you are first in your class and you've got stuck up about it. But my dear brother, even great men live to regret their pride. And who are you compared to them? You must have read about what happened to Ravan. Just to pass an exam isn't anything. The real thing is to develop your mind, understand the significance of what you read. Ravan was master of the earth. Such kings are called rulers of the world. All the kings of the earth paid taxes to him. Great divinities were his slaves, even the gods of fire and water. But what happened to him in the end? Pride completely finished him off, destroying even his name. There wasn't anybody left to perform all his funeral rites properly. A man can commit any sin he wants to, but he'd better not be proud. When he turns proud, he loses both his world and the next. You've just been promoted one grade, and your head's turned by it. Don't assume that because I failed, I'm stupid and you are smart. When you reach my class, you will set right through lower teeth when you have to bite into algebra and geometry and study English history. It's not easy to memorize these kings' names. There were 8 Henrys. Do you think it's easy to remember all the things that happened in each Henry's time? If you write Henry the 8th instead of Henry the 7th, you get a 0. There were dozens of James, dozens of Williams, and scores of Charles. You get dizzy with them. Your mind is in a whirl. Those poor fellows didn't have names enough to go around. After every name, they have to put second, third, fourth, and fifth. If anybody asked me, I could have rebelled and reeled off thousands of names. And as for geometry, well, God help. If you write ACB instead of ABC, your whole answer is marked wrong. If you bring the perpendicular line down on that line, it will be twice the baseline. I will ask you, what's the point of that? If it isn't twice as long as it's 4 times as long or half as long, what do I care? But you've got to pass, so you've got to memorize all. They say, write an essay on punctuality no less than 4 pages long. So now you open up your notebook in front of you, take your pen, and the whole business. Who doesn't know the punctuality is very good thing? A man's life is organized according to it. Others love him for it, and his business prospers from it. How can you write 4 pages on something so trifling? Do I need 4 pages for what I can describe in one sentence? It's not economizing time, it's wasting time. We want a man to say what he has to say quickly and then get moving. It's a contradiction for them to ask us to write consciously. Write a conscious essay on punctuality in no less than 4 pages? Alright, if 4 pages is conscious, then maybe otherwise they'd ask us to write 1 or 200 pages. Run fast, walk slow. At the same time, is that all mixed up or isn't it? When you get into my class, you'll really take a beating and then you'll find out what's what. Just because you got a first division this time, you are all puffed up. So pay attention to what I say. What if I failed? I'm still older than you. I have more experience of the world. Take what I say to heart, or you'll be sorry. It was almost time for school, otherwise, I don't know when this medley of sermons would have ended. I didn't have much appetite that day. If I got a scolding like this when I passed, maybe if I had failed, I would have had to pay with my life. My brother's terrible description of studying in the 9th grade really scared me. I'm surprised. I didn't run away from school and go home. But even a scolding like this didn't change my distaste for books a bit. I didn't miss one chance to play. I also studied, but much less. Well, anyway, just enough to complete the day's assignment and not be disgraced in class. But the confidence I'd gained in myself disappeared, and then I began to lead a life like a thief. Then it was the yearly exams again, and it so happened that once more I passed and my brother failed again. I hadn't done much work, but somehow or other I was in the first division. I myself was astonished. My brother had just about killed himself with work, memorizing every word in the course, studying till 10 at night and starting again at 4 in the morning and from 6 until 9:30 before going to school. He'd grown pale, but the poor fellow failed again, and I felt sorry for him. When he heard the results, he broke down and cried, and so did I. My pleasure in passing was cut by half. There was only one grade left between my brother and me. The evil thought crossed my mind that if he failed just once more, I'd be at the same level as him. And then what grounds would he have for lecturing me? But I violently rejected this unworthy idea. After all, he'd scolded me only with the intention of helping me. At the time, it was really bad. But maybe it was only as a result of his advice that I'd passed so easily and with such good marks. Now my brother had become much gentler towards me. Several times when he found occasion to scold me, he did it without losing his temper. Perhaps he himself was beginning to understand that he no longer had the right to tell me, or at least not so much as before. My independence grew. I began to take unfair advantage of his toleration. I half started to imagine that I'd pass next time, whether I studied or not. My luck was high. As a result, the little I'd studied before because of my brother, even that ceased. I found a new pleasure in flying kites, and now I spent all my time at the sport. Still, I minded my manners with my brother and concealed my kite flying from him. In preparation for the kite tournament, I was secretly busy solving such problems as how best to secure the string and how to apply the paste mixed with ground glass into it to cut the other fellow's kites off their strings. I didn't want to let my brother suspect that my respect for him had in any way diminished. One day, far from the hostel, I was running along like mad, trying to grab hold of a kite. A whole army of boys came racing out to welcome it, with long, thick bamboo rods. Nobody was aware who was in front or in back of him. Suddenly, I collided with my brother, who was probably coming back from the market. He grabbed my hand and said angrily, "Aren't you ashamed to be running with these ragamuffins after a one paisa kite? Have you forgotten that you are not in a low grade anymore? You are in the 8th now, one behind me. A man's got to have some regard for his position. I am sorry to see you have so little sense. You are smart, there's no doubt of that. But what use is it if it destroys your self respect? You must have assumed I am just one grade behind my brother, so now he doesn't have any right to say anything to me. But you are mistaken. I am 5 years older than you, and even if you come into my grade today, that difference of 5 years between us, not even God, to say nothing of you, can remove. I am 5 years older than you and always will be. The experience I have of life and the world you can never catch up with, even if you get an MA and a DLit and even a PhD. Understand? Understanding doesn't come from reading books. Our mother never passed any grade, and dad probably never went beyond the 5th. But even if we studied the wisdom of the whole world, mother and father would always have the right to explain to us and to correct us. Not just because they are our parents, but because they'll always have more experience of the world. Maybe they don't know what kind of government they've got in America or how many constellations there are in the sky, but there are 1,000 things they know more about than you or me. God forbid, if I should fall sick today, then you'd be at your wits' end. You wouldn't be able to think of anything except sending a telegram to dad. But in your place, he wouldn't send anybody a telegram or get upset or be all flustered. First of all, he'd diagnose the disease himself and try the remedy. Then, if it didn't work, he'd call some doctor. But you and I don't even know how to make our allowance last through the month. We spend what father sends us and then we are penniless again. But As much as you and I spent today, Dad's maintained himself honorably and in good reputation the greater part of his life and brought up a family on half of it. So, brother, don't be so proud of having almost caught up with me and being independent now. I'll see that you don't go off the track. If you don't mind, then I can use this too. I know you don't like hearing all this. I was thoroughly shamed by this new approach of his. I had truly come to know my significance, and a new respect for my brother was born in my heart. With tears in my eyes, I said, "No, no. What you say is completely true, and you have the right to say it." My brother embraced me and said, "I don't forbid you to fly kites. I'd like to. But what can I do? If I go off the track myself, then how can I watch out for you? That's my responsibility." Just then, by chance, a kite that had been cut loose passed over us with its string dangling down. A crowd of boys were chasing after it. My brother is very tall, and leaping up, he caught hold of the string and ran to top speed towards the hostel. And I ran close behind him. So, friends, this is the end of the story. Please stay tuned for another new story.